I was putting together my talk for today and wondering, okay, do I talk about organic food, farm to table? And I was thinking that, for me, I think I would be preaching to the choir on all of this, and I think there's other speakers about food in this realm. And so what's really close to my heart, especially this time of year, is sustainability through nourishing ourselves individually. Because how can we go out into the world and really do our work in sustainability, go out into the world, be in relationship, be with family, in community, social interactions, if we're not really putting ourselves first and filling this up through food and nourishment, but also through other practices, creating space in our lives for ourselves to just relax down. And so before I really start getting into food, I just wanted to take a minute and speak about the springtime. I was speaking with a good friend of mine just before I got up here about how intense spring can be. And so I just want to see hands of if your to-do lists are a bit longer lately. Do you guys notice that? If you find that your minds are a bit speedy right now, more than normal, right? And for me, I'm extremely sensitive to the seasons, and I have been as long as I remember. And I know that this time of the year, I have to make space for nothing, right? And it's challenging. I actually have to schedule it. And that means like going for a walk in the middle of my work day, even if it's 10 minutes, finding time to sit, getting out in nature, just being before I go out there and do. And this is sort of an ebb and flow. But I find that these spaces that I create really give way to the choices that I make. And then if I'm not creating spaces, I'm making choices that aren't good for me. And I want to speak about this in the realm of food. So speaking about balance, it's so important. And so we are what we eat, right? And in the picture in the left, I love this little slide. We see root vegetables, which I find incredibly grounding, nourishing, and full of nutrients and vitamins. And then on the right, you're busy. You got to grab something quick, right? But this meal and meals like this are full of empty calories, and most of us are left feeling a bit inflamed, a bit low energy. Another thing I want to speak about with food is how for years it's been bringing cultures together, families together. The kitchen, Aaron mentioned my grandmother. My 100-year-old grandmother passed away a couple months ago, the same day that my book was released. And she taught me how to cook. And I just have these incredible memories of being a child and learning how to, get my hands in lamb, get my hands in butter, make pastry. And so the kitchen for me in my life has been a place of gathering. And for those of you, who work at the City Club or who come to the City Club, just come into the kitchen and we hang out. You taste things, and it's lovely. And that's how many homes are as well. So food and the culture of food goes into us emotionally, spiritually, as we come together as a community, as families around a table. It's a place of smiles, right? Sometimes. So if everybody could just stand up for a minute. And I want to talk about food as food and preparation of food today as a spiritual practice, which is something we might not have heard before, but the intention that we put into our food goes into us, and I'm going to keep repeating this, but then we take it out into the world. And so coming from this place of stillness, if we could just close our eyes and put one hand on our heart, another hand on our belly, and just inhale through the top of your head and exhale through your feet. Do it again, your own pace. One more time. Nice. Open your eyes, hands down at your side. I'm just going to read you something. A spiritual practice is simply a habit that gives us energy and reminds us of what matters most. Every moment in our lives is a chance to be present and to open our hearts. Through practice, we cultivate a sense of peace and compassion that pervades the rest of our relationships and activities. So, slowing down, cooking, eating, resting, making space. For me, all of these things can go together to truly nourish ourselves. Feel free to have a seat if you like. If we are moved to look at sustainability practices in the world, we must first look at ourselves. We can be doing, we can be making things happen, we can be making money, we can be making change in the world. But if our energy is always like this, we're unbalanced. So coming back, rooting down, and eating nourishing food, because sometimes we don't connect the food, the nourishment to our sense of grounding, but for me, it's first. It requires responsibility, right? Self-responsibility for our bodies, physical bodies, our being, and our energy. And we take this out into the world in communication with our partner, first thing in the day. And sometimes for me, I notice, now I'm extremely sensitive to food, but if I've eaten Indian buffet the night before, let's say, and it hasn't agreed with me lately, I might be snappy. I may not have as much space to meet what's in front of me. And I really notice that. And something that's critical is inflammation, right? So what is inflammation? How does it manifest for us? I have a coaching business and I work with individuals, generally in their homes, sometimes long distance, but I love working with people and giving them the tools they need to actually transform their food lives. And it's been lovely. So a lot of folks that I encounter have disease. They have these symptoms here that I'll talk about. Low energy. Inflammation can manifest on your skin. Inflammation can manifest as pain, especially in the joints, especially as we get older. Brain fog. Inability to connect with one another, like I was speaking about a moment ago. So this can be coworkers, right? Not having the presence within, the stillness within, to really meet your employees or your coworkers. Social and intimate interactions. Libido. Food is completely connected with your ability to connect with your partner, right? And poor digestion. Including bloating, abdominal pain, constipation, loose stools. So these sorts of things that oftentimes we're like, oh, well, I'm just having a rough day, or with my belly, or maybe I ate something. But these sorts of symptoms in our gut can be over the course of time. And so it's never too late to look at our relationship with food, again, not from a place of perfection at all, but noticing, right? Slowing down enough to notice this agreed with me or this didn't, simplifying. And so this is kind of small up here, but just to go over briefly some top inflammatory foods: sugar, artificial sweeteners, common cooking oils, which I go over in depth in my book, or find me after, check my website, there's lots of information on that. Because that's one, now when you go out to eat, even some of, I'm not going to name names, but the healthiest restaurants that you may think in Boulder, they're using canola oil, they're using grapeseed oil. So if you don't feel so great after that, after you eat at some of these places, that's oftentimes could be why. Dairy products for some, especially non-organic dairy products, non-organic meat, processed meat, alcohol, refined grains, MSG, which sometimes is natural flavors, right? Not always, but sometimes when you're looking at ingredient lists. Corn, which is tough in Colorado, right? Corn can cause inflammation. Just because there's so many, Mexican restaurants, and we just have fresh tortillas in the market, and it's so delicious. And if you're gluten-free, you find that a lot of products are made with corn instead of wheat. So just noticing, like, educating yourself, what could be inflaming to you. Refined salts, which is one of my biggest passions with food. And we can talk more about that later, but focusing on high mineral sea salt, any sea salt really, and Himalayan pink salt. So those are some safe ones. There's some other salts that are healthy as well. But you'll find on the back of a kosher salt box, yellow prussiate of soda. Anybody familiar with that? So causes cancer, makes rats die. Okay, so throw it away. First thing I do when I go to somebody's house when I'm doing coaching is we look at salt, and I show them the back of the salt box. So take a peek, do a little research on that. Most of us have salt all the time. So it's important to, again, just educate. And then if you have particular sensitivities to food, some people will have sensitivities to, peanuts, or some people have sensitivities to certain vegetables. So just knowing yourself well. You can do personal explorations with food. You can take tests. There's different ways of finding out more about this. And this is just, I don't know if you can see this, but it's just a little buffet of inflammatory foods. Okay. And then going back to education, so educating yourself, there may be a beautiful breakfast thing like this, and it's like, oh, it's so beautiful, but some things can cause inflammation. Some items, if you know what's in it, if you know that it's sugar, or these croissants, they're lovely, they're beautiful, right? But they're likely coming frozen with lots of trans fats and not doing you any justice. So the more you know, the better. Again, taking responsibility. So what's real food? Anybody want to take a guess?
Whole foods. Whole.
Right. What's whole foods?
Unrefined in their original state.
Yeah, exactly.
Or lightly refined, unprocessed.
Right. Beautiful. So you go shopping, right? I mean, it's great if you can go to the farmer's market, or if you can go to local farms. But not all of us can. Not everybody in the country can make it to these sorts of places, or have the time, or have the money. So you think about going to a grocery store, even Safeway, or big chain grocery stores, and you walk around the perimeter of the grocery store. This is the safer place to be, right? You can get proteins, you can get vegetables, you can get fruit, right? It's the middle of the grocery store, the packaged stuff that's not going to do you any favors. So somebody told me this years ago, and I'm generally short on time, so I just stick to that, right? I just run in. I never use grocery lists hardly. I just go in and I buy what looks good, what looks fresh, what's organic, and that's generally the safe way to go. So real food from the earth. And in eating this way, it's not a diet. Like, there's so many diets out there, and I'm not opposed to that, but for most of us who, let's say, just a quick caveat. So if you have an autoimmune condition, for example, you might need to be on the autoimmune protocol diet, or you have certain digestive issues and you need to be on FODMAPs or GAPS diet. But if you are a person that generally doesn't have a lot of sensitivity, eating real food is where it's at, right? And not having too many thoughts about it, just shopping around the edge of the grocery store, grabbing, if you eat meat, organic meat, seafood, if that works for you. And there are guides and there are more details in my book about the best choices. But I'm not a doctor. I don't try to, to do that. But I know that if my plate has 60 to 70% vegetables on it, I'm feeling good. Protein, healthy fat is the rest, and that works for me. We strengthen, we rebuild, cleanse, we harmonize our beings with food, allowing our bodies to work as they are naturally built to work, okay? And how do we do this? What tools can we use? My main thing is simplifying, and simplifying shopping, cooking, as we've discussed, prioritizing meal preparation. Now, when you're just starting out, it's nice if there is a bit of rigidity to this. If you find, okay, I got an hour and a half on Sunday and an hour on Wednesday to make it happen, to chop a bunch of veggies. I don't know what I'm going to do with them yet, but I'm going to create some stuff, right? I have a couple proteins in my fridge and I'm going to make it happen. I got some stuff in the freezer. To simplify, that's what we're talking about. This is a recipe from my book. It takes 15 minutes. I use a broth, either a vegetable stock or a bone broth that I have extras in the freezer. And I sear a piece of fish. I take the fish out of the pan. I simmer my bone broth, throw some veggies into steam, put it all on a plate, and that's it. So when you're short on time, just keep it simple. Organic vegetables, as much as possible. Keep it simple. Put 2 sheet pans in the oven so you got loads for the next couple days. For breakfast, throw a couple fried eggs on top if you eat eggs. If you're a vegetarian, have some nuts or some avocado. And simplify. Prep in advance. Find dishes that work for you that last in the fridge for a couple days. This one here is it's actually an organic rotisserie chicken from Whole Foods, which I use all the time. Peel it, whatever veggies you have in the fridge, simple salad dressing, toss it all in the fridge and it's there for days. I have a few recipes of this in my book. Take it to work, eat it for breakfast, rethink breakfast. If you do breakfast, rethink it and think, okay, why not have my dinner leftovers for breakfast? Like what's wrong with that? If it's veggies and protein, you're doing the right thing for your body. Take a chance, you'll get used to it. Leftovers are key to success. You may have found in your life that you've tried to make a shift with food so many times, right? And you may have brain fog. Does anybody not know what brain fog is? Raise your hand if you need a little. Yeah, so brain fog is kind of this new term that people are using. And basically for me, what it translates to is I'll be at work and I'll be cooking and I'm like, oh my gosh, what's the menu for today? I have no idea, right? Or I'm having a conversation and I completely forget what I'm talking about. So food contributes to this, all right? Backwards. So it comes back to inflammation, right? And we don't, there's not, in traditional Western medicine, I think, there's not this connection with brain and body, brain and gut so much. I think there is more so now. I just attended a paleo conference in Austin, and they spoke so much about this. And if you have time, if you have space, if you're interested, I would do a bit of research on it. And I have some particular names of books that are really fascinating. So yeah, schedule your food prep, as I was speaking earlier. Make time. And this is my book, Heartful Kitchen. It took me 5 years, and I took some breaks. I had some injuries, and I kind of got off path. But once I got back to it about, I'd say 14 months ago, I had this complete change within. I was reading my old recipes and I was saying, oh, you know what? These are way too long. People are busy. And I simplified everything. I cut the time for all the recipes. And you'll take a peek at it, you'll see the recipes and it will seem complicated because the pictures are really nice, but it's not. And there's always ways to simplify. The way that I work with my coaching clients is a little bit from the book, but it's also intuitive cooking. And that's a bit what I was talking about earlier. What I would encourage you guys to experiment, after hearing today, is to go to the grocery store, find some proteins that you're accustomed to, that you love, get loads of vegetables, and just food prep. And then just do what you're moved to do. And if that's completely overwhelming, maybe reach out. But look for some simple recipes online and have that word simplify just be in your consciousness around your food. Stock your fridge, have leftovers. And so I just wanted to speak, Aaron spoke about this, but I've worked with a lot of folks with special diet needs and that are on particular diets that are generally diagnosed, like conditions that are diagnosed by their doctors, and their doctors have recommended that they be on particular diets. So if any of you are on these diets, AIP, GAPS, FODMAPs, low histamine diet, or plant paradox, or know of people that are, this book offers specifications for each recipe based on those diets. And then, yeah, just a picture of the truffles. Thank you so much. Does anyone have any questions? Yeah.
Will you give us the executive summary on oils?
Will I give it to you right now?
Yeah, just oils.
Yeah, so cooking oils. There's solid oils and there's liquid oils. I'm going to speak about it from a cooking standpoint only right now. So if you can primarily cook with high heat oils, and the safe ones are organic coconut oil. If you're not a vegetarian, then I would recommend looking at chicken fat or duck fat. They're so delicious. Anybody cook with these? Yeah? So when you have leftover fat, you can save it and you can strain it and then keep it in your fridge, and it lasts for months. Tallow is, and I would suggest, so I go to a farm, Golden Hoof Farm. Anybody know Golden Hoof? Yeah? So I could speak for days about Golden Hoof, but they sell tallow from their lamb and from their beef that is exquisite to cook with. And if you're, yeah, like I said, if you're vegan or vegetarian, coconut oil is a great one. Avocado oil is a great one. That's what's in my house. I use flax oil for salad dressings, extra virgin olive oil, but that's about it. That's about all that I have. Yeah. Anybody else? Questions?
So first and foremost, thank you so much for all the educational insight that you brought this morning. My question is related to everything, but it's a little bit outside of what you talked about. And I'm just curious if you found that also being mindful about your intention when you're preparing your food, if that actually portrays into, for instance, if I'm upset and angry and I don't take a second to breathe and clear my head, and I make a sandwich, that sandwich might not give me the same nutrients, I might not absorb it the right way, it might taste a little funky, as opposed to me taking some time to clear my head, breathe, and enjoy what I'm doing and think about the intention that I'm putting into the food. I know that there are some other cultures, particularly when they're harvesting animals or vegetables, that they try to do this and try and stay mindful. And I've seen people actually walk away in the middle of a harvest because they're not necessarily in the right state of mind, body, and spirit. Mm-hmm. So I was just curious what your thoughts are on that, and if that's something. Obviously, I'm sure if you love your job and you love what you do, you're going to be doing that regardless, for the most part. So I was just curious what your thoughts and experience are about that.
Yeah, you're really speaking to me, actually. So I've been at the City Club for 10 years almost, and what you're speaking about comes to me every day when I'm there. I manage a small kitchen, and if you don't know where the City Club is, it's right by the Boulder Creek, and things come up at work, right, that are stressful. I am experiencing emotions, and so many times I walk away and take a walk on the creek, because I find that this idea of what you're putting into the food is so hugely important. Equally important, where are we when we're eating also? I was with this morning because I was a little nervous. I've never given a talk before about food, like to a group of people. And I'm such a, thanks. Thanks. Thank you. I am very much of a one-on-one type of person. And so, you guys made me lose my track of thought. So I was boiling a couple duck eggs this morning and chopped up an avocado and made myself a bowl of it. And I had to go put it down and go take a walk because I was nervous. And I knew that if I ate when I was nervous, that I would come here and perhaps not feel well. And so yeah, so cooking, and we're not perfect, right? Like, we have emotions. Anybody not have emotions? So I think that as we cook, as we live, as we be with each other, being aware of where we are emotionally is huge. And finding, as I'm going back to the beginning of the talk, finding space for stillness, we create space. We create more space from our emotions. And then we know, okay, perhaps I need to go take space. Being in a conversation, with my partner, sometimes we'll get in an argument and I'll go take space, and then I'll come back and I'm new to the situation. So relationship with food for me, has always had its ups and downs over the years since I was 10. My mother, I hope she's not watching, but should I say this? Yeah, she'll be fine with it. So I was a really chunky little kid, and I was pretty unhappy with that, and I got made fun of a lot. And my mom, bless her, she thought the right thing to do was take me to Weight Watchers when I was 10. And it was hard, and it created some challenges. It created some challenges as a teenager. And my relationship with food was hard, up and down. And then when I was 25, I finally said, you know what? Screw this. I'm going to go to culinary school because I love food. I grew up in this Lebanese family where there's such a focus on food, making our own bread, doing all these things with food. And I did love food, but I had a tricky relationship with it. So oftentimes what you're saying, your question, your comment comes up for me, my relationship with food, this plate of food in front of me. Is it time? Is it time to eat? Where am I at? So it's been a constant journey, and emotions play in there. So I would encourage all of you, because I think most of us have some kind of history of relationship with food that can be challenging. So asking us where we are we when we're cooking? Where are we when we're eating? Making space. So thank you so much for that question.